The research station floated quietly above Kepler 442b, a massive structure of metal and glass that looked like a spider web stretched across the darkness of space. Dr. Teo stood in the observation room, watching the planet turn below him. Its surface covered in strange purple forests and glowing crystal formations. He had been waiting for this moment his whole life, though he did not know it until now. Teo was a tall man with sharp eyes and dark hair that he kept neat and short. He had spent 30 years studying the stars and the things left behind by old civilizations. Most people thought he was crazy. They said he wasted his time looking for nothing. But Teo knew better. He knew that somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between the stars, there were secrets waiting to be found. The alarm on his screen beeped softly. A signal. After 3 weeks of searching, the deep space sensors had finally picked up something. It was buried far below the surface of the planet, under rock and soil that had not moved in millions of years. The signal was old, very old, but it was still sending its message into the void, as if waiting for someone to hear it. "Dr. Teo, you need to see this," a voice called from the doorway. It was Heywan, his research partner and the station's best linguist. She was shorter than Teo, with intelligent eyes and quick movements. Her fingers always moved when she was thinking, as if she was typing on an invisible keyboard. "The signal is getting stronger. Whatever is down there, it wants to be found." Teo nodded and followed her to the main computer room. The walls glowed with blue light and charts that showed the signal coming from deep underground. Heywan's fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling more information from the sensors. The signal pattern was unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was almost like a pulse, like something alive, like a heartbeat that had not stopped for millions of years. "We need to go down there," Teo said quietly. His voice was calm, but his hands felt shaky. This was it. This was what he had been searching for his entire life. The third member of their team was Kite, the security officer. He was a quiet man, with a strong face and eyes that seemed to have seen too much. He never talked about his past, and Teo had learned not to ask. Kite had joined their team 6 months ago, and he was very good at his job. Too good, perhaps. Sometimes Teo wondered why a security officer so skilled would want to work on a research station in the middle of space. But he had stopped wondering about that long ago. "It could be dangerous," Kite said when they told him about the signal. He was checking equipment, his movements quick and practiced. "We do not know what we will find down there. That is exactly why we need to go," Teo replied. "We have to know." They prepared for the expedition carefully. They put on suits that would protect them from the strange air and the unknown dangers of the planet. The suits were white and covered in sensors and lights. They took tools and cameras and devices to collect samples. They took weapons too, though Teo hoped they would not need them. The dropship cut through the purple sky like a knife through fabric. Below them, the crystal formations grew larger and larger. Some of them were as tall as mountains. They caught the light of the distant sun and threw it back, creating rainbows that danced across the landscape. It was beautiful and strange, like being inside a dream. The signal grew stronger as they descended. The ground beneath them started to shake slightly. The sensors showed that the source of the signal was very close now, just a few hundred meters below the surface. They found the entrance to the vault by accident. It was hidden behind a wall of rock. But when Kite shone his light on it, they could see the outline of a door, smooth and geometric, made of a metal that did not look like anything on Earth. The door had symbols carved into it. Old symbols, in a language that had not been spoken for millions of years. Heywan touched the symbols gently with her gloved hand. "It is a warning," she whispered. "And an invitation. The symbols say, 'Enter if you are ready to know the truth.'" The door opened slowly when Teo placed his hand on a smooth panel beside the entrance. The sound it made was like wind passing through ancient tunnels. Cold air rushed out, carrying with it the smell of time and dust and forgotten things. Inside, the vault was enormous. It stretched away into darkness. and when they turned on their lights, they saw that the walls were covered in shelves. On these shelves were thousands upon thousands of crystalline objects, each one glowing faintly with its own internal light. Data storage devices. Teo understood immediately. Someone had stored information here, and left it for someone else to find. They moved deeper into the vault, and Kite found a control panel that still had power. It took Hei-1 several minutes to figure out how to use it. But eventually, the ancient system came to life. Screens that had been dark for millions of years suddenly blazed with light. The first file they opened showed a video. The image was corrupted and flickering, but they could see clearly what it showed. A humanoid warrior, covered from head to foot in armor that glowed with bioluminescent patterns. The armor was unlike anything in any human museum or history book. It was beautiful and terrible and very, very old. But that was not what made Teo's hands go cold. It was the warrior's face. The warrior had the same broad forehead that Teo had, the same sharp cheekbones, the same shape of the eyes, looking out at the camera with an intensity that burned across the ages. It was like looking at a mirror of himself. But the image was millions of years old. On the screen, the warrior was fighting. He was fighting something that had no clear shape, something that moved like liquid shadow and reached out with appendages that seemed to bend in directions that should not be possible. The warrior was strong and fast, and his movements showed training and skill. But he was also afraid. Teo could see it in the way the ancient warrior moved, in the tension of his body, in the way he never quite had time to rest. The audio of the video was playing, and the warrior's voice came through the speaker, speaking in a language that was somehow familiar to Teo's ear, a language he should not have been able to understand, but did. The warrior was screaming. Teo reached over and pressed the button to mute the audio. The sound of that ancient scream cut off abruptly, but the image of the warrior continued, mouth open, fighting against the darkness. "What is it?" Hei-1 asked, moving closer to look at the screen. "Do you recognize the language? Can you understand what he is saying?" Teo did not answer her. He was staring at the warrior's face, at the mirror of his own reflected across millions of years. His mouth felt very dry. "Teo?" Hei-1 asked again, concern in her voice. "Are you all right?" Kite was very still. He was staring at the screen too, and there was something in his expression that looked like recognition, like confirmation of something he had always suspected but never dared to believe. "I don't like hearing myself," Teo whispered, so quietly that the others could barely hear him. His hand moved to touch the screen, touching the ancient warrior's face. In that moment, in that dark vault far below the surface of an alien world, everything changed. Everything that Teo had believed about himself, about humanity, about the place of humans in the vast universe, shattered into pieces. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that there was no way to put those pieces back together again. The weeks that followed Teo's discovery were strange and difficult. He could not sleep well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the warrior's face looking back at him from across the ages. He found himself walking to the computer room at odd hours, playing the video again and again, watching the ancient warrior fight against creatures that should not exist. Hei-1 was working constantly, trying to understand the language of the precursors. That was what they called them now. The ones who had created the vault. The precursors. The first ones. The builders of cities, and the creators of messages that would survive millions of years. She sat in the main laboratory, surrounded by papers and screens, her eyes tired from reading and analyzing. Her quick fingers had slowed down now, weighed down by the burden of what she was discovering. She would call Teo over whenever she found something important, and they would sit together in silence, trying to understand what it all meant. "The dates," she said one day, pushing a screen toward him. "Teo, look at the dates. The systems on these devices use a mathematical format for time that is different from ours. But I have figured it out. The oldest files are more than 2 million years old. 2 million years. Nothing should last that long. Nothing." Teo looked at the numbers on the screen. 2 million years ago, humans on Earth were still learning to make basic tools from stone. They were beginning to walk upright on the African plains. And yet, here, someone had been building crystal storage devices and leaving warnings about something called the void. Kite came to them one day and closed the door behind him. His face was very serious. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I have not been completely honest about why I am here." They listened as Kite told them about his real job. He worked for a classified division of the United Nations, a section that nobody knew about, that officially did not exist. For centuries, his agency had been studying human DNA, trying to understand why human genetic code contained sequences that should not be there. Sequences that looked engineered. Sequences that looked designed. "We always suspected," Kite said quietly, "that humanity was not natural, that something or someone had changed us. But we had no proof. Now we do. Now we know it was real." HFY continued her work, translating more and more of the precursor texts. She discovered records that told of a great war, a battle between light and darkness that had lasted for thousands of years. The Precursor Warriors were soldiers, she learned, enhanced beings who could fight with skill and strength beyond normal limits. They were created to stand against something ancient and evil that the texts called the void. "It is not a place," HFY explained, showing them the translations. "It is a thing. A creature, maybe. Or maybe many creatures. The texts are unclear. But it is something that eats worlds. It consumes everything it touches, and it leaves only darkness behind." The most shocking discovery came when HFY found a section of text that explained why the vault had been left behind. Why these messages had been preserved so carefully for so many millions of years. "The precursors knew they would lose," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "They knew they could not win the war against the void forever. So they made a plan. They created us. They created humans and put the knowledge inside us, into our very DNA. They left us genetic memories and instincts and abilities that we do not yet understand. And then they left us here to wait. To wait for what?" Teo asked, though he thought he already knew the answer. "For the void to return," HFY said. "The texts say that the void is not dead. It is only sleeping, dormant. And one day, it will wake up. And when it does, humanity will need to remember what the precursors taught us. We will need to become warriors again. We will need to fight. Life." Teo walked to the window and looked out at the purple planet below. Somewhere inside his body, inside his cells and his bones and his blood, was the genetic code of an ancient warrior. Somewhere inside him was a memory that was not his own, a skill that was not learned, a purpose that had been waiting for millions of years to be discovered. He began to analyze the warrior's movements in the video, comparing them with recorded martial techniques from Earth. He wrote programs to study the way the ancient precursor moved, the way he fought, the way he defended himself against the creatures of shadow and darkness. The results shocked him. Every martial art that humans had ever developed, from the gentle styles to the most brutal fighting systems, seemed to echo movements from the precursor video. It was as if the ancient warrior's techniques had somehow survived in human culture, passed down through generations and centuries, preserved in the muscle memory of fighters and soldiers across all of human history. "It is in our DNA," Teo realized, speaking out loud. "We are born knowing how to fight. We just do not know that we know." Kite nodded slowly. "My agency has known about this for a long time. We have records of soldiers and fighters with abilities that should not be possible. People whose instincts save their lives in ways that cannot be explained. People who move too fast, or think too quickly, or have strength beyond what their bodies should provide. We always thought it was just genetic luck, good DNA. Now we know better." More and more of the truth was revealed as they worked through the precursor data. They learned that the genetic modifications were built to activate in certain conditions, in times of great stress or danger. They learned that the precursor memories could surface in dreams or in moments of extreme emotion. They learned that somewhere in every human being, the ancient warrior was sleeping, waiting to wake up. HFY found one more text, translated from the oldest sections of the vault. It was addressed to whoever would eventually find these messages, millions of years into the future. It was addressed to humanity. It says, HFY, read carefully, her voice filled with emotion. If you are reading this, then you are us. You are what we became. You are the last of the precursor line, though you do not know it. We could not stay to protect you. We could not be there when the void returned. But we could prepare you. We could hide ourselves inside you, wait inside your blood, sleep inside your bones, and when the darkness comes again, when the void awakens, we will wake too. You will wake. You will remember. You will fight. Teo felt something shift inside his chest. It was not painful, but it was profound. It was like a door opening in his mind. A door that had always been locked, suddenly swinging wide. He was not just a scientist anymore. He was something else. Something ancient. Something that had been sleeping for millions of years. And he was beginning to wake up. The alarm on the station began to sound at 3 in the morning. It was not a gentle alarm. It was loud and sharp, and filled the corridors with urgent sound. Teo woke from a dream, or perhaps from a memory that was not his own. He could not remember what the dream had been about, but he felt afraid and ready at the same time. He ran to the main control room, pulling on his uniform as he moved. HFY was already there, her face pale and confused. Kite was at the communication console, his hands moving across the buttons with practiced speed. What is happening? Teo asked. We have a signal, Kite said, not looking away from the screen. Something is coming. Something very large. And it is moving through space toward us. It will be here in less than 4 hours. The sensors showed a massive object moving through the void of space. It was difficult to see clearly, as if the object did not quite exist in normal space, as if it was phasing in and out of reality. But they could track its path, and its destination was clear. It was heading directly toward the research station. What is it? HFY whispered. I do not know, Kite replied. But I have sent an emergency signal to Earth Command. They are not responding. Whatever this is, it is interfering with all communications. The three of them stood in silence, watching the impossible object approach through the darkness. Teo felt something moving inside him. Something that had been dormant for so long that he had never even noticed it was there. It was like waking up, but he was already awake. It was like remembering, but he had never learned these things before. The ancient warrior memories were surfacing. He could feel them moving through his mind, like fish swimming in dark water. He could feel the weight of millions of years of training that he had never received. He could feel the terror and the determination of beings who had fought a war against something that could not be defeated, only delayed. HFY was trembling. The texts, she said suddenly. The texts talked about the return, about something that would come back. Teo, I think this is it. I think this is what the precursors were warning us about. We need to evacuate, Kite said, his voice still calm, even though his hands were moving faster now. Emergency procedures flowing from his fingers into the computer systems. I am starting the evacuation sequence. We need to get away from here. But Teo did not move. He was staring at the screen, at the massive object approaching through space. And suddenly, with complete certainty, he understood what it was. It is a ship, he said quietly. An old ship. An ancient ship. And I know what is calling it here. I know what is coming. The object appeared in visible space as it drew closer. It was a structure of impossible geometry, built in shapes and angles that hurt to look at directly. It was covered in what might have been weapons, or might have been something else entirely. The surface of the ship was broken and damaged, as if it had been flying through space for an incredibly long time. enduring the attacks of cosmic radiation and collision, and time itself. My God, Hei-1 breathed. It is beautiful and terrible. Teo closed his eyes. Inside his mind, he could see memories that were not his own. He could see the construction of this ship, long ago, when the precursors still walked free under their own sun. He could see the decision being made to load it with one final message, one final warning. He could see the ritual of the departure, when the last precursor warriors placed their genetic code and their knowledge inside the first humans, and then watched as those humans were sent away from the dying worlds, where the void was consuming everything. It is a beacon, Teo said, opening his eyes. It is the last ship of the precursors, and it has been sending out a signal for millions of years. It is trying to tell us something. It is trying to warn us. The signal on the screen suddenly changed. It became clearer, sharper, more understandable. And in that signal, Hei-1's translation program started to pick up words. Old words. Ancient words in the language of the precursors. The message, Hei-1 said, reading it as it came in. It is repeating the same phrase over and over. It says, the void awakens. The void awakens. The void awakens. Inside the research station, alarms continued to sound. The equipment began to shake as the massive ship entered the planet's orbit. But Teo felt strangely calm. Inside him, something ancient was waking up. Something that had been waiting for this moment for millions of years. He could feel the presence of the Precursor Warrior inside him, like a second consciousness, like a ghost made of memory and genetic code. The warrior was not separate from him. The warrior was him. It had always been him, and he had simply not known it yet. We are not evacuating, Teo said. His voice sounded different now, deeper and stronger than before. We are going back to the vault. Hei-1. We need more translations. Kite. We need to understand what this ship is trying to tell us. The precursors did not leave us here to run away. They left us here to be ready. Kite looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. You are changing, he said. It was not a question. We are all changing, Teo replied. We are remembering who we are. We are the descendants of warriors who fought against the darkness. And the darkness is waking up. As they prepared to return to the planet's surface, Teo felt another wave of memories pass through him. He saw battles and sacrifices, and moments of impossible heroism. He saw the precursor warriors standing against creatures of shadow, knowing they could not win, but fighting anyway because that was what they had been created to do. And he understood, finally, what his life had been leading toward. Every moment of curiosity about the past, every moment of wondering about his place in the universe, every strange dream, and every instinct that had never quite made sense, it had all been preparation. He was not just a scientist anymore. He was the beginning of something new. He was the first of humanity to truly wake up. And the void was waking too. The descent to the vault was different this time. Teo moved with new certainty, as if his body was remembering paths and movements that his conscious mind had never learned. Inside his head, the warrior's presence was strong now, almost overwhelming. It was not separate from him anymore. It was part of him, woven through his thoughts, like threads through fabric. Hei-1 noticed the change. You are moving differently, she said as they walked through the ancient corridors of rock and crystal. You are moving like someone else. Like someone who has done this before. I have, Teo said. He did not explain further, because there were no words that could make Hei-1 understand the experience of having memories that belonged to someone else. Memories that belonged to millions of years of history, all pressed down inside a single human mind. The vault opened before them, its ancient doors sliding aside as if it had been waiting for them to return. The precursor ship was visible through the transparent sections of the vault walls now, a massive structure hanging in the planet's orbit like a wound in the sky. Hei-1 rushed to the computer terminals, her fingers flying across the keyboards, with desperate speed. The beacon is changing its transmission pattern, she said. It is not just broadcasting the same message anymore. It is sending more information. It is sending instructions. Teo moved to the central screen and began to understand what the ancient device was trying to communicate. The precursors had known they were dying. They had known that their final ship would eventually lose power, would eventually stop transmitting. But before that happened, they had loaded this beacon with knowledge and with purpose. They had created messages across time itself, and Teo could understand them. Not just with his intellect, but with something deeper, with the ancient knowledge that lived in his bones. They are telling us to prepare, he said quietly. They are telling us that the void is not dead. It is sleeping, but it is beginning to wake up. It has been waking up slowly for a very long time. And soon, very soon, it will wake completely. Kite had been silent, studying the data that the beacon was transmitting. Now he spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of what he was saying. My agency has been tracking something in deep space for 30 years. A disturbance. A pattern of stars going dark. Entire systems simply vanishing. We did not understand what was happening. We had theories, but none of them made sense. Now I understand. That is not stars disappearing. That is the void, consuming everything in its path. The implications hit them all at once. The void was not a threat that would come in the future. It was already here. It was already hunting, already feeding, already moving through the galaxy with patient, terrible purpose. Teo felt panic rise inside him, and then something else. Something that was not his own emotion. The ancient warrior was responding. The precursor consciousness was pushing the fear aside, replacing it with something else. Purpose. Determination. A willingness to accept the terrible duty that had been left waiting across millions of years. We need to record something, Teo said suddenly. His voice was not entirely his own now. It had taken on a timbre and a quality that seemed to come from very far away. We need to respond to the beacon. The precursors left a way for us to answer them. He moved to a specific section of the vault, and without consciously knowing how he knew, his hands found the control panel that would activate the ancient recording device. HFY and Kite watched in amazement as Teo's hands moved through procedures that no modern human could have known, accessing systems that had been sealed for millions of years. What are you doing? HFY asked. I am speaking to them, Teo replied. I am speaking to the precursors. I am speaking to myself. From across the ages, he stepped in front of the recording device and began to speak. The words came out in the ancient precursor language, a language that should have been lost forever, but that lived now in Teo's genes and in his deepest memory. He spoke with confidence and sorrow, with acceptance and determination. He spoke of what he had learned, of what humanity had become, and of the duty that now lay before them. When he finished speaking, he turned off the recording device. He felt exhausted, as if he had lived through a lifetime in those few minutes of speaking. HFY was looking at him, with tears in her eyes. What did you say? She asked softly. I told them that I understand, Teo said. I told them that humans will be ready. I told them that we will remember what they taught us. I told them that we will fight. I told them that even though we will probably lose, we will stand against the darkness anyway, because that is what we were created to do. Kite was receiving a transmission on his secure communication device. His face grew very serious as he read the message. Earth Command is responding, he said. They have been aware of what is happening. They want us to return immediately with all the data we have collected. They want to begin the program immediately. What program? Teo asked, though he thought he already knew. The program to awaken others like you, Kite said. The program to find every human being who carries the precursor gene, who carries the potential to become like you. The program to prepare humanity for war. Teo looked at the video screen, where the ancient warrior still fought his silent battle against the creatures of shadow. The warrior's face was his own. Yet it was not his own. It was a reminder of what he had been. What he had always been, underneath everything else. "I do not want to be a warrior," Teo said, and his voice was sad. "I am a scientist. I study the past. I want to understand things, not destroy them." "I know," Kite replied. "But you are also a warrior. You have always been a warrior." The science was just what the warrior did while he was waiting to be called. Teo felt the truth of those words settle over him like a heavy cloak. He would return to Earth. He would help find others like himself. He would help prepare humanity for a war that was coming. A war that no human being wanted, but that could not be avoided. But first, before he left this place, he needed to do one more thing. He played the video again, the one with the ancient warrior. This time, he did not mute the audio. This time, he heard the warrior's voice, speaking across millions of years, crying out in the darkness against the creatures of shadow. And Teo heard in that voice something that he recognized completely. He heard his own voice. He heard the voice of every human who had ever been forced to be brave when they did not want to be brave. He heard the voice of sacrifice and duty, and the terrible knowledge that sometimes the things you have to do are not the things you want to do. He heard the voice of a warrior who did not want to be a warrior. And he understood that this was the voice of humanity itself. The underground facility in the heart of the Korean mountains was carved out of solid rock. It was hidden from satellites and sensors and the eyes of the curious world. This was where the real work began. This was where humanity would learn what it truly was. Teo stood in the observation room above the main laboratory, watching as the first group of recruits came through the doors. They did not look like soldiers. They looked like ordinary people. A pilot named Min-hee with steady hands and eyes that had seen strange things in the sky. A medic named Do-yeon, whose instincts had saved more lives than any medical training should have allowed. A strategist named Nari, whose tactical predictions were so accurate that military commanders had begun to wonder if she possessed some form of impossible gift. There were others too. A musician whose hearing could detect patterns that no human should have been able to hear. A mathematician whose mind could solve problems that seemed to have no solution. A construction worker whose strength sometimes seemed to exceed what his body should contain. They were scattered throughout the population, these descendants of the precursors, hiding in plain sight. Their gifts dismissed as talent or luck or natural ability. Kite had spent months finding them. The genetic markers were subtle, but they were there. Once you knew how to look, you could find them. The highest concentration seemed to be among those who had experienced extreme stress or danger, as if the awakening required a trigger, a moment of profound crisis that forced the ancient DNA to activate. Haewon had analyzed all the genetic data and written the educational materials. She had taken everything they had learned from the Precursor Vault and translated it into language that modern humans could understand. She had created the training programs and the meditation techniques that would help these new recruits access the ancient memories that lived dormant inside them. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, coming to stand beside Teo at the window. "No," he replied honestly. "I will never be ready for this. But we do not have a choice. The void is moving closer. The disturbance patterns in deep space are becoming more frequent. Whatever is awakening out there, it is beginning to move in this direction." In the chamber below, the recruits were being given the same briefing that Teo had received. Videos of the ancient warrior, translations of the precursor texts, the truth about human origins, and the truth about what was coming. Teo watched their faces as they processed this information. He saw denial, fear, wonder, determination. Some of them wept. Some of them seemed to understand immediately, as if they had always known on some deep level that they were different, that they were part of something larger than themselves. Min-hee raised her hand during the question period. "If we are descendants of warriors," she asked, "why do we not remember being warriors? Why do we have to learn how to fight?" Teo moved to the communication screen so he could respond directly to her. Because the memories are not accessible in normal consciousness, he explained. They are buried deep in your genetic code. They activate during extreme stress or through specific training techniques. HFY will teach you how to access them safely. But understand, once you begin to remember, there is no going back. You will never be able to forget what you learn about yourself. Duyan asked a different question. What happens if the void reaches Earth before we are ready? Kite answered this one. His voice was calm and matter-of-fact. Then, humanity will be consumed. Civilization, as we know it, will end. Everything that we have built, everything that we have created, will be destroyed. The void does not negotiate. It does not have mercy. It simply consumes. The silence that followed those words was heavy and absolute. Nari, the strategist, was the one who asked the question that everyone was thinking but did not want to voice. Can we win? If we do everything right, if we awaken all of us, if we remember everything the precursors taught us, can we actually defeat the void? Teo and Kite exchanged glances. It was not the answer they wanted to give, but it was the answer that was true. No, Teo said quietly. The precursors fought the void for thousands of years and never defeated it. They only delayed it. The best we can hope to do is hold it back. To buy time. To survive long enough to scatter humanity across the stars, so that something of us will survive. Even if our world does not. Several of the recruits fell silent after hearing this. The weight of the truth was heavy on them. They had been told that they were special, that they were warriors, and now they were being told that their war was one they could not win. But Minhee stood up. Then we delay it, she said simply. We hold the line. We buy time. That is what warriors do. We do not fight to win. We fight to protect others. We fight to give people we love the chance to survive and escape. If that is what is required of us, then we do it. The other recruits looked at her, and then one by one, they began to nod. Dari spoke next. I will help you analyze the void's patterns. If we understand how it moves and how it feeds, maybe we can predict where it will strike. Maybe we can evacuate people before it arrives. Duyan said, I will work to understand the medical aspects of our transformation. If we are going to change into warriors, we need to understand how to do it safely and how to keep ourselves functional during the process. One by one, the recruits committed themselves to the task ahead. They understood the impossible odds. They understood that they were probably going to die, but they also understood what the precursors had understood millions of years ago. Sometimes the right choice, and the one that requires the most courage, is to stand against the darkness anyway. Over the following months and years, more recruits were added to the program. Families were broken apart when one member was found to have precursor genetics. Some recruits went willingly into the mountain facility. Others were more reluctant, clinging to their old lives and the comfort of not knowing what they truly were. But slowly, a force was being assembled. Not a military force in the traditional sense, but something older and deeper. A force of warriors who understood that they were the guardians of humanity's final chance. A force that was training every day to be ready for a threat that was still moving through space, getting closer with each passing moment. HFY became Teo's wife in a quiet ceremony in the facility. Minhee became his second in command. Nari took charge of strategic planning. Duyan built a medical division capable of healing injuries that conventional medicine could not treat. Kite trained the recruits in combat, pushing them beyond their human limits, awakening the warrior inside each of them. And Teo became something more than a scientist and something more than a warrior. He became a leader. He became the voice of the precursors, speaking through a human body to prepare humanity for the war that was coming. He would stand sometimes in the recording chamber and watch the video of the ancient warrior, listening to the screams of millions of years ago. And he would understand that the circle was closing, that the ancient past and the distant future were colliding in the present moment, that everything that had been waiting for millions of years was finally beginning. The awakening was complete. But the real test had not yet begun.